The muggy southern air was thick with the scent of magnolia blossoms when Emily Carter stepped onto the sweeping porch of her family's old estate. A place that once buzzed with summer laughter now pressed heavy on her chest. She breathed in, slow, careful, trying to find traces of her grandmother's spirit woven into the creak of the swing and the whisper of oaks. Boxes and dust greeted her instead. Emily wandered through high-ceilinged rooms laced in sunbeams, trailing her fingers across faded wallpaper and memories. The world had tiptoed around her since her grandmother's passing, as if afraid to say something that might break her all over again. By evening, heat clung to her skin. She drifted toward the garden where fireflies blinked above tangled beds. There, the old magnolia tree, her grandmother's pride, now crowned in white blooms, beckoned. Emily knelt, brushing away fallen petals, and her hand grazed something unnatural. A battered metal box buried beneath the roots. Inside, tied with blue ribbon, she found letters. The paper was yellowed, the pen swirling in an elegant, passionate script. None of them were signed with her grandmother's name. But one look, and Emily knew. These words belonged to her, to the woman who'd raised her, shared stories of lost loves. But never this, never him. Stunned, Emily clutched a letter to her heart. Who was this writer who spoke of wild love and impossible choices? Why had her grandmother kept such a secret? Night deepened, cicadas rising in chorus. Emily read until her eyes blurred, the mystery sparking inside her. Tomorrow, she vowed, she'd begin looking for answers about the letters and the stranger who'd loved her grandmother beneath the magnolia tree. Just as she turned to head inside, a voice startled her from the shadows. "You're not the only one looking for the past, you know." Heart racing, Emily looked up to find Daniel. The town's historian, appearing out of the dark, hands in his pockets, his eyes lingering not on the letters, but on her. Emily's heart thudded as she clutched the fragile letter. Daniel. He'd always appeared in the background of local museum events and town meetings, unassuming, yet somehow always watching with a thoughtful gaze. Now, he stood a few paces away, the glow of the porch light catching the stubble on his jaw. "You startled me," she managed, nerves thickening her voice. Daniel raised his hands in apology. "Didn't mean to. I just saw your car from the road. Figured you'd be home this week. I heard about your grandmother." Emily offered a quick, grateful nod. "Thank you. It's strange being here without her." He shifted, eyeing the tin box at Emily's side. "What's that you found?" She hesitated, instinct warring with curiosity. "Letters," she admitted, holding one out for him to see. "From someone I never knew about. A love story, hidden under the magnolia." Daniel's eyes sparkled with interest. He crouched beside her, not touching, but close enough she could feel his warmth in the evening air. "Mind if I take a look?" She studied him, searching for any sign of ridicule. All she found was genuine intrigue. With a nod, Emily handed him a letter. His brow furrowed as he skimmed, lips moving silently. After a breath, he whispered, "This is incredibly well written. Do you know who the author is?" Emily shook her head. "No signature. Just passion. Secrets. If these are about my grandmother, I hardly recognize her." Daniel looked up. "Sometimes who we are in our hearts is much bigger than the small-town version people see. Maybe finding the truth in these letters will help with your healing. And maybe I could help you figure out who he was." A pause hung between them, filled with longing and something unspoken. "Why would you want to help?" Emily asked softly. Daniel's gaze flicked to the blossoms above. "Because old stories matter. And because your grandmother was always kind to me when nobody else was. I owe her, and maybe you, a favor." The night hummed. Beneath the magnolia tree, where secrets once grew, a partnership began forming. Emily felt the first ember of hope flicker inside her, faint yet undeniable. She smiled, tentative. "All right, we'll uncover it together." As they gathered the letters and rose to their feet, Daniel grinned, almost boyish. "Tomorrow, then." Emily watched him retreat down the garden path, her world tilting toward possibility for the first time since her grandmother was gone. The following morning, sunlight spilled through the lace curtains of Emily's old bedroom. She woke with the memory of the letters heavy on her mind, and Daniel's promise lingering around her heart like a new melody. By noon, she'd sorted every last letter in chronological order upon the polished dining table, each envelope trembling with secrets too long kept. True to his word, Daniel arrived on time, bearing a worn leather satchel and 2 steaming cups of coffee. He set one before Emily with an easy, crooked smile. "Thought you might need this. Is it as overwhelming for you as it looks?" She exhaled shakily, gesturing to the sea of correspondence. "It feels like I'm peeking into someone else's universe, one I was never meant to see." Daniel perched on the bench beside her, their arms nearly touching. "History's like that. Hidden compartments, untold truths. Let's see if we can crack the code. Any details stand out?" Together, they began sifting through the first letter, Daniel reading aloud. "My dearest Magnolia, if only these petals could speak for me. My ink is a poor substitute for your laughter in the garden." Emily's breath caught. Magnolia, her grandmother's favorite tree, and nickname, she suspected, from a time when secrets lived in shadows. "Wait," she interrupted, pointing to a date at the top. "That's 1959. My grandmother would have just turned 18. Daniel's brow furrowed. "That was just before she got engaged to your grandfather, wasn't it?" Emily nodded, chills running down her spine. "There's something in these letters that must have changed everything." Hours slipped past as they traced the blossoming romance between Magnolia and her mystery writer. Love aching to break free. Daring midnight rendezvous described in careful, longing lines. Then, a sharp, anxious shift in tone as the letters turned toward the summer of 1960. Daniel touched a trembling envelope. "This one's different. It feels like a goodbye." Emily pressed her hand to the letter, just as thunder rumbled outside, the storm reflecting the sudden gloom in her chest. Neither of them spoke for a moment, the weight of untold heartbreak hovering in the pause. Daniel finally looked at Emily, eyes steady. "We have to find out who he was. Maybe someone in town still remembers. But first, are you ready to read this one?" Emily drew a shaky breath, nodding. Side by side, fingers brushing, they unfolded the letter together, knowing it might hold the key to everything. The past, her grandmother's secrets, and maybe the answer to why Emily herself had never quite believed in love. Rain tapped gently on the window as Emily and Daniel carefully smoothed the paper of the goodbye letter between them. Daniel read aloud, his voice hushed and reverent, as if afraid too much sound might break the brittle bond between the past and present. My dearest Magnolia, if this is my final letter, let it carry all the words I could not bear to speak. I have loved you in stillness and in storm, but I am leaving the South come morning, my heart torn. My promise to your father, heavy as iron. I pray you find happiness, even if it's not with me. Never forget our summer beneath the magnolia tree. With endless love, yours always. A thick silence swallowed the room. Emily wiped away a tear she didn't realize had fallen, while Daniel reached out instinctively, his hand hovering above hers. She didn't pull away. Who would have been forced to leave like that? Daniel whispered. There's no name, nothing but this pain. Emily straightened, determination flickering in her eyes amidst the storm outside. Somebody in town knows, or there's a clue we haven't found. My grandmother's best friend, Mrs. Hargrove. She's lived here forever. If anyone remembers, it's her. Daniel nodded, brushing a lock of hair from his forehead. Then we start there. If we want the whole story, we need to talk to people who lived it. A slow, almost grateful smile crossed Emily's lips. Will you come with me? He answered, without hesitation. Of course, but we need to be careful. There are folks who guard the past like treasure they can't bear to lose. They gathered the letters, wrapping them gently in the blue ribbon, as if binding the hearts of strangers with their own. As the storm passed and the sky lightened, hope tugged at them both. That evening, they walked along brick-lined streets, dusted with rain, practicing what to say. Daniel's gentle humor eased Emily's nerves. And when they reached Mrs. Hargrove's porch, Emily squeezed his hand for courage. A creak, a screen door opening, and Mrs. Hargrove appeared, her eyes sharp with memory and something else, a wary knowing. Emily Carter and Daniel Moore, what brings you calling at sunset? Emily swallowed, the story trembling on her tongue. Mrs. Hargrove, I found something in the garden. Letters. I think my grandmother wrote them, and there's a name missing, a love story she never told. Mrs. Hargrove stared, her lined face unreadable. She stepped back, opening her door. Well then, she said softly, you two had better come in and sit a spell. There's more to that story than you could ever imagine. Emily and Daniel entered Mrs. Hargrove's living room, the air thick with the aroma of gardenias and lemon polish. Family photographs lined the mantel, and sunlight filtered through lace curtains, painting the walls with dappled light. Mrs. Hargrove settled into her flowered armchair, folding her hands with the gravity of someone about to unearth buried treasure. May I see one of the letters, Emily? She asked, her voice gentle, but laced with an old sorrow. Emily handed over the top envelope, watching as the older woman's eyes flickered with recognition. Mrs. Hargrove sighed. Your grandmother, oh, she was wild in her youth. Wild and beautiful, and caught the attention of more than a few hearts. She traced the ink with a trembling finger. But there was one who stood apart. His name was Samuel Bishop. He was a poet from Charleston, here for the summer to help at his uncle's hardware store. Emily leaned forward, her hope a sharp ache. Samuel? He's the writer? Mrs. Hargrove nodded, voice tinged with nostalgia. They met under that very magnolia, believe it or not. He saw her reading, offered to share his poetry. They were inseparable, but he was never welcome in your family's world. Daniel spoke quietly. Because he wasn't from good Southern stock? Exactly. Your great-grandfather forbade it, Mrs. Hargrove replied. Threatened to send her away to finishing school if she didn't end things. So Samuel decided to spare her the pain. He left the day after their last letter. Emily's heart twisted as questions tumbled out. Did my grandmother ever see him again? Did she love my grandfather? Mrs. Hargrove's eyes grew misty. She did her duty. Married, raised a family. But she never let me forget Samuel or their days by the Magnolia. Some loves, Emmy, don't die. They just settle into silence. Silence clung to the corners of the room. Daniel turned to Emily, his touch warm at her back, grounding her. Thank you, Mrs. Hargrove, Daniel said. You've given us more than we could hope. Emily squeezed Mrs. Hargrove's hand, her gratitude overflowing with grief and wonder. I wish she'd told me. I wish she hadn't had to choose. Mrs. Hargrove gave a bittersweet smile. Sometimes the truth waits for just the right hearts to find it. As Emily and Daniel stepped back into the waning light, Emily slipped her hand into Daniel's, uncertain what the future might bring, but certain now that the past was a tapestry, rich with both pain and possibility. The night air was thick with secrets as Emily and Daniel wandered slowly back to the Carter estate. Street lamps cast golden pools on the pavement, and every cricket seemed to chirp echoes of the past. Emily's head swirled with Samuel's name. Samuel Bishop, the poet who changed everything. Daniel watched her thoughtfully, their hands still linked, though neither had mentioned it. When they reached the garden gate, he finally broke the quiet. You okay? He said softly. She nodded, struggling to find words. It's like mourning her all over again, not just losing her, but losing the parts she never shared. Daniel's eyes shone with empathy. Maybe she hid the letters for a reason, so you could find them now, so they'd finally be safe. Emily bit her lip, gazing at the old magnolia tree. I can't just let this end here. What happened to Samuel? Do you think he's still alive? Daniel shrugged, but hope lingered in his voice. It's possible. Or maybe there's family, someone who would want to know his story matters too. They sat on the porch steps, the letters in Daniel's lap. As he shuffled them, a sheet slipped free. Daniel frowned, picking it up. Wait, what's this? Emily leaned close. Folded inside the final letter was a faded photograph. In it, a young man with intense dark eyes and an easy smile held out a handful of magnolia petals to a laughing girl, Emily's grandmother. On the back, written in Samuel's sprawling hand, For my Magnolia, until we meet again. Emily clutched the picture, heart racing. His handwriting matches the letters. This is proof. Daniel grew thoughtful, voice low with excitement. Let me do some digging. I have access to newspaper archives and town records. If Samuel wrote anything, poetry, journals, there'll be a record. I'll check tomorrow. Emily studied Daniel, her gaze lingering on the flash of hope in his eyes. Why does this matter so much to you, Daniel? He hesitated, shadows flickering across his face. I know what it is to lose someone and never know why. If the past can give you peace, it can give me some too. A tender hush fell between them. Emily placed her hand on Daniel's, offering silent gratitude and something neither was ready to name. Together, beneath the magnolia's sweeping branches, they mapped out a plan, one that might finally mend old hearts and maybe, just maybe, open new ones in the process. The next morning, Emily woke to sunlight slicing through the blinds, chased by the flutter of hope. She found Daniel already at the library, sleeves rolled up, hunched over dusty microfilm and stacks of yellowed newspapers. He barely looked up when she entered, a wild, determined energy in his eyes. "You've been here all night?" Emily teased, dropping her bag onto a nearby chair. Daniel grinned sheepishly, rubbing his temples. "I might have lost track of time, but look." He slid a brittle page toward her. It was a clipping from August 1960, the same summer as the final letters. "Local poet leaves town unexpectedly," the headline read. The article named Samuel Bishop as the young man who'd vanished without much explanation, noting he'd sold his few belongings and that local hearts, specifically one undisclosed, were left broken. Emily traced the words, heart aching for a love lost so quickly and quietly. Daniel shuffled more papers. "That's not all. I found records of a Samuel Bishop publishing poems in Charleston under the pen name S.B. Magnolia." And he handed her a faded pamphlet. Inside, a haunting poem. Lines about gardens drenched in southern light, and a girl with magnolia white skin. Emily caught her breath. "This is her." "It is," Daniel said, eyes shining. "And look at the date. It was published only a year after he left. Proof that Samuel, somewhere far away, had tried to keep her alive in his words." Emily sank into a chair, emotions swelling in her throat. "If Samuel is gone, do you think he ever found happiness?" Daniel hesitated, then met her gaze. "Maybe not the kind he wanted, but his words kept blooming. That kind of love doesn't just fade." Silence stretched, charged with things unsaid. Emily reached across the cluttered table, touched Daniel's hand. "Thank you for doing this. I never felt like I belonged here. Not really. Maybe now I understand why." He shrugged softly. "Or maybe you're just ready to let yourself belong to someone." A blush crept into Emily's cheeks, but she didn't let go of his hand. "If we can find Samuel's family, someone still living, I want to share these letters with them. They deserve the truth." Daniel nodded fiercely. "Let's track them down, together." They left the library arm in arm, a team, hope guiding their steps as the mystery of Samuel and their intertwining stories drew them closer than ever. By late afternoon, the air shimmered with heat as Emily and Daniel traced the winding road toward the old Bishop house in Charleston, hearts thumping with nerves. Daniel drove, one hand steady on the wheel, the other resting between them, close enough for Emily to touch. Between bursts of nervous chatter, sunlight cast a golden haze over Spanish moss and cypress knees along the water's edge. They stopped at a weathered blue house shaded by willow oaks. Emily's palms were slick, despite Daniel's reassuring squeeze. "Ready?" he whispered, voice barely more than a promise. She nodded, clutching the photograph and letters. "Ready as I'll ever be." An elderly woman answered the door, her sharp eyes softening the instant she glimpsed the old envelope in Emily's trembling hand. "You must be here about Samuel," she said, voice trembling with an uncanny certainty. Daniel cleared his throat. We found letters, love letters, with his name. We hoped. She stepped back, motioning them inside, her living room a collage of family photos and books stacked high. I'm his sister, Ada. It's been a lifetime since I saw my brother's handwriting. Please, tell me everything. As Emily shared every detail, the garden, the summer romance, the ache of goodbye, Ada listened with tears streaking her cheeks and wrung her hands on her lap. My brother never married. He poured everything into his poetry, but he stayed alone. That summer haunted him until the very end. Emily pressed the photograph into Ada's fingers, her voice barely holding. He loved her. She loved him too, even after all these years. Ada's eyes shone with gratitude. Thank you for bringing this home. He would have wanted her granddaughter to know he never forgot. The afternoon faded as Ada pulled an old shoebox from the closet. Inside, Samuel's unpublished poems, hundreds of them. Ada handed a few to Emily, her voice trembling. His best words, I think, were written for your grandmother. Daniel squeezed Emily's shoulder. Some stories don't have happy endings, but they deserve to be known. Emily nodded, tears spilling freely. It's more than I ever hoped to find. As dusk fell and they prepared to leave, Ada caught Emily's hand. You carry her spirit, you know. Don't let old fears steal your chance at happiness. Hand in hand, Daniel and Emily walked out beneath the trees. The weight of generations lifted just enough for something new to take root. But as they drove home, an unspoken tension pulsed between them, their own hearts teetering on the edge of confession, each afraid that history might repeat itself if they let themselves love too deeply, too soon. Night wrapped the Carter estate in a soft, fragrant hush as Emily and Daniel returned, their minds heavy, but hearts strangely lighter. Exhaustion tugged at Emily, but she drifted toward the magnolia tree instead of the house. Daniel followed, silent, until she stopped among the roots where it all began. She turned to face him, the moonlight making her hair glow. I never thought knowing the truth would hurt and heal at the same time. Daniel nodded, his hands in his pockets. Because love is messy, it leaves scars, but it's worth digging up, isn't it? Emily glanced at the stars above. I keep thinking, if it hadn't been for Samuel leaving all those years ago, I wouldn't be here. My grandmother wouldn't have raised my mom. And, he gently interrupted, you wouldn't be standing under this tree with me. The air hummed between them. Daniel drew closer, the scent of magnolia thick around them. Emily, there's something I should tell you. I didn't just want to help you solve the mystery. I wanted to spend the summer at your side. Being with you, it's become the best part of my days. Emily's breath caught. She fidgeted with the blue ribbon from the letters, the old ache of loss wrestling with something bright and living in her chest. I think I'm scared of loving someone so much I lose myself, that I'll become someone's memory rather than their future. Daniel reached for her hand, his touch hesitant but sure. Would you let yourself risk it? With me? Silence. The cicadas sang. Emily stared at their fingers intertwined, remembering Ada's words, her grandmother's secret ache, and Samuel's enduring devotion, wrapped in poems and ink. Slowly, she looked up and nodded, tears brimming. If you promise we won't hide our hearts like they did, not under the magnolia, not anywhere. His voice wavered, thick with hope. No secrets, not with you. They lingered, holding on, hearts thundering like distant storms. In that moment, possibilities shimmered between them, more powerful than any fear. But as dawn crested the garden's edge, both knew that choosing each other was only the beginning. There were still choices and changes ahead. One final letter to write, and new roots to put down in the softened earth of the future. A new morning broke over the Carter estate, drenching the dew-soaked magnolia petals in golden sunlight. Emily awoke with a sense of tenderness cocooned around her, a strange, thrilling hope that refused to slip away. She made her way outside, finding Daniel already beneath the magnolia tree, scribbling in his worn notebook, an anxious smile lighting his face when he saw her approach. "Couldn't sleep," he confessed. "Felt like there was something more we could do." Emily sat beside him, tucking herself close. "Me too. I kept thinking about the people we've met, the stories they trusted us with, about how I want our own to be honest, even if it isn't easy." Daniel hesitated, then handed her the notebook. "I started writing a letter, not to the past, but to what comes next." She scanned his words, promises scribbled with hope and uncertainty, vows to love bravely and openly, not hidden beneath roots or locked away by shame. Tears slid down her cheeks, but these were different. They were the tears of someone finding the place she belonged. "Will you write the rest with me?" he asked, voice soft and rough all at once. Emily reached into her pocket for her grandmother's blue ribbon, tying it gently around the binding of their shared letter. She smiled and took Daniel's hand, the air warm and filled with birdsong. "We'll write it together," she said. "Every page." The summer rolled on, the estate echoing with new laughter. Emily and Daniel held an outdoor reading, inviting Ada and Mrs. Hargrove and all the townsfolk who remembered the pain and beauty of the past. Under the magnolia tree, Emily read excerpts from the old letters and Samuel's poems, followed by the first lines of her and Daniel's new letter to the future. The audience wept and cheered, the applause feeling like an embrace from every soul who'd ever dared to love and lose and love again. That evening, as crickets serenaded their quiet walk through the lantern-lit garden, Daniel paused. "Do you really think roots can heal?" Emily squeezed his fingers, gaze luminous. "If you're planted with honesty and love, just like these." He pulled her close, forehead pressed to hers, and they stood together beneath the magnolia blossoms, proving, at last, that while love cannot rewrite the past, it can bloom fiercely in the present, carrying its fragrance into every tomorrow. Letters Beneath the Magnolia Tree was no longer only a story of heartbreak and secrets. It had become a legacy of courage, connection, and the sweet, daring promise to love without fear.